Most power only exists because you've never tested it. And the moment you do, everything changes. Frederick Douglass learned that lesson before he was even free. Now, most of us know Frederick for his afro and giving speeches, but when he was a teen, he administered a 2-hour beating on a slave breaker that changed his life forever. I'm Che, and welcome to Move Different, where we tell stories about bold action and what you can learn from them. All right, let's hop right into it. The year is 1833 in St. Michael's, Maryland. Frederick Douglass is 16 years old, and he's enslaved by a man named Thomas Auld. Now, as you can imagine, life has not been sweet. He was separated from his mom at the age of 5, but even while in bondage, he learned how to read thanks to a kinder mistress, which ironically is what made his owner nervous. See, he didn't like this new thinking, reading, independent version of Frederick, so he sent him off to a man named Edward Covey. And Covey was known for one thing: breaking slaves. If your slave had spirit, Covey would beat it out of them. And here's the wild part. Covey was known as a religious man. Yeah, a real God-fearing, church-going fella. I guess get you a man that can do both, like the Christians who praise Jesus on Sunday and then cheer for ICE on Monday. Anyway, what followed for Douglass was 6 months of absolute hell. Daily whipping, psychological torment, backbreaking labor, and barely enough food to survive. In his autobiography, he described himself as broken in body, soul, and spirit, and even prayed for death. One day, he finally had enough and he ran back to his master, but his master sent him back. So he's walking back 7 miles to Covey's place in the hot August sun to a hopeless situation. And somewhere on that walk, something changes. He makes a decision. He says to himself, "The next time that man hits me, I'm fighting back." Now, in slavery, you could be killed for talking back to a white man. So imagine what happens when you put your hands on one. But the very next day, it all went down. Covey tried to tie him up for another whipping. And this might be the origin of the phrase, "you got the right one today," because on that day, Covey definitely had the wrong one. Now, let's paint the picture. Douglass was described as tall and broad-shouldered, and he'd been working in the field since he was a kid. He's 16 now, and he's strong. Like my homie says, that's a balanced breakfast over there. Now, Covey loved to fight, but only when it wasn't a fair one. So they're wrestling in this stable when, surprise, surprise, Covey is getting manhandled. So he called him a slave named Hughes for help. Douglass kicked Hughes straight in the ribs. Boom! And my man Hughes realized he did not want any of that smoke. So then Covey calls a guy named Bill for help. Bill comes over and basically says, "Hey, this looks like a personal situation between you two. Y'all got to work it out."
Oh, you want something too, old man? Huh? No.
Now, this fight goes on for 2 hours. The boxing match is 36 minutes and the UFC main card is 25 minutes. Now, I've dabbled in combat sports myself. After about 3 rounds, I'm gassed. I don't want to fight anymore. I feel like if you're fighting someone for that long, y'all are definitely talking. So not only did Covey get beat up by a high schooler with grown man strength, he probably got told about it the whole time. Eventually, Covey just gives up, throws in the towel. I believe we have some footage of how that fight ended.
Teach your man how to squabble.
Douglass was with Covey for 4 more months, but Covey never whipped him again. And Covey never told anyone either, because it's hard to be a legendary slave breaker when your slave breaks you. Later, Douglass wrote these famous words: "You see how a man became a slave, now see a slave become a man." Now, here's the interesting part. Douglass didn't escape slavery for another 5 years. But imagine living your bondage, you stood up to the worst man around and won. He was later sent to a different master, and he started secretly teaching other slaves how to read. Why? Because once you test false power, you realize it's not so powerful. And that's the lesson. Sometimes you got to fight back. Sometimes you have to test the thing that's scaring you, because some power only exists because no one's ever tested it. But the moment you do, everything changes. If you like stories that remind you to take bold action, like, subscribe, and follow. Remember, fortune favors the bold. Let's move different.